I want to show how Shaykh Uthman, in his latest discussion with David Wood, used deceptive, evasive tactics. I'm going to play some of the discussion and omit certain parts that aren't related to the purpose of this video, but I want to play out as much as I can in order to show you guys the conversation. As it plays, I'll pause and interject, and we have a special surprise guest who's going to refute Uthman here as well. If you want to see the full video, go to David Wood's channel, don't go to Uthman's channel, and support David by giving him likes, subscribe, comment. Please pray for him, pray for his family, his ministry. And without further ado, here we go.
Surah 5 verse 32, if anyone murders an innocent person, it will be as if he has murdered the whole of humanity. And if anyone saves a person, it will be as if he has saved the whole of humanity.
Excellent.
And there's quotation marks, there's no dots there. Do you believe that is two questions. Do you believe that is an accurate quotation of that verse?
Okay.
And two, do you believe that the meaning is represented correctly here as far as the context of the passage in the Quran? Because you got the story of Cain and Abel right afterwards, and then you got sort of lessons drawn right after that.
So I didn't make this flyer.
Okay.
I just want you to be clear. I don't know which translation or how they're using.
None.
But, I'm sorry, what?
This can't possibly be a translation.
It's got to be some translation. I mean, it's not in Arabic, right?
They left so many things out of that verse
but again,
they could call it a paraphrase or something like that.
So,
but that's not the verse.
you know, and I know there are also paraphrased Bibles. I have one at home that paraphrases meanings and they're the verses throughout the Bible. You know that, right?
Yeah.
So if they're using something like that, that's up to them. But what about this ayah? What problem do you have? Does the Quran not forbid killing people here?
Not in a way that would condemn terrorism.
So let's look at an Arabic one. Surah 5, right?
This is thematic translation. What's that mean?
It takes themes by paragraph.
Okay.
So look it up. 532.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So read it.
Okay. So Surah 5 verse 32. That is why we ordained for the children of Israel that whoever takes a life.
Sure.
So that's the first part that they cut out, that this was children of Israel.
That's not cut out. I mean, again, so some verses are like half a page. To quote a part of that verse, as long as it doesn't change away from the meaning. Whatever was ordained.
It's actually a quotation from the Talmud here, not the Torah.
No, you poor guy, you don't understand.
This is a quotation from Mishnah Sanhedrin chapter 4.
Okay, so let me explain this to you. This is not Mishnah, Sanhedrin, or the Talmud. Okay? This is the Quran.
Yeah, no.
Okay? This is not from the Talmud. This is the words of Allah revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
No, your belief.
Oh, you're talking to a Muslim, so yes, my belief, bro. But is this in your hand, the Talmud or the Quran?
Yeah, but it says revealed to the children of Israel.
Sure.
So it's a revelation that the children of Israel have.
So
and they have that. It's in the Talmud.
I got you. But this is not from the Talmud. This is from the Quran. This is chapter Al-Ma'idah that is in the Quran. Okay? Now, those things that Allah reveals to us about what was revealed to the people of Bani Israel is in the Quran as a benefit for us as well. Those things we take rulings from, depending on whether they were specific for them or not. And this is one of the verses where Allah has revealed a guidance for us in the Quran. Okay? Yeah. So now, if I was to use like Ayatul Kursi or one of those very long ayat, and I use a part of the ayat that is relevant to the subject, this is not cutting or leaving out.
You normally indicate when you're cutting into a verse and cutting out. You know what I mean? You put dot, then part.
Now, as you can see, David's questions are in relation to the tract or the pamphlet that Uthman is handing out, specifically in their citation of chapter 5 verse 32. Number 1, do you believe that is an accurate quotation of that verse? And 2, do you believe that the meaning is represented correctly here as far as the context of the passage in the Quran?
So this is again your misconception. Let me just explain this to you now, because see, I have to educate you about so many things so you can understand. When the Quran was revealed, there are ayat that have wukuf. You know what a waqf is? You probably don't. So
And here is our surprise special guest to tell us what is waqf. And is waqf, or the signs of stopping, original to the Quran or not?
Returning to our topic of the rules of tajweed, today we have a very easy and, if you like, interesting topic. No, we are not doing the traffic signs, we are doing the signs of stopping. Not when you're driving a car, but when you're reciting the Quran. Where should you stop and where should you start? Okay. Here now, it is important to mention that these signs that we find in the Quran, every single Quran has various signs of stopping in it. Okay. Where should you start? Where should you not stop? Okay. Where are you allowed to stop? Where is it preferred to stop but you shouldn't? Where is it preferred not to stop but you should? So on and so forth. These signs were not found, obviously, in the Quran that the companions wrote.
When the Quran was revealed, there are ayat that have wukuf.
These signs were not found, obviously, in the Quran that the companions wrote.
When the Quran was revealed,
these signs were not found, obviously, in the Quran that the companions wrote. Rather, these are signs that have been derived by the scholars of Islam. Because the point is that it is possible that if you stop at a certain place and don't continue, you will give the wrong interpretation or the wrong meaning. Therefore, the scholars have read the Quran and have derived certain places where it is preferred to stop, where it is mandatory to stop, where it is preferred not to stop, and so on and so forth. So all of this goes back to the ijtihad, to the personal reasoning of the scholars.
When the Quran was revealed,
so all of this goes back to the ijtihad, to the personal reasoning of the scholars. To the personal reasoning of the scholars.
When the Quran was revealed,
to the personal reasoning of the scholars. It is because of this that you will find differences in these signs between various Qur'ans. Every single company or every single corporation that wishes to publish a Qur'an, it will get a list or a committee of scholars. The scholars will sit down and they will decide where these signs should be placed. So don't get confused if the signs that we show you today are different from the signs in your personal mushaf. The point is that every single mushaf, if you turn to the last few pages, it will tell you the signs that it uses. And the most common mushaf of our times is the Madani mushaf, the mushaf printed in Medina.
ayat that have wukuf. You know what a waqf is? You probably don't, so...
Putting aside the fact that the Quran was not originally revealed with these marks, according to our special guest, Shaykh Yasir Qadhi, here is where the sleight of hands begins. This is where his deceptive, evasive tactics start. In the Arabic Quran, there are little markings called stopping marks. The scholars of Islam, who can't even agree on where these marks go, use these marks to indicate to the reciter as they're reciting the Quran where it is suggested to pause or to continue reading until another pausal mark or until the end of the verse in order to breathe while you're reciting the Quran. Nothing to do with pronunciation or translation. So why is he bringing this up when David Wood is asking about translation? This is why I call it a deceptive, evasive tactic on Uthman's part. These marks only serve to show you when you should or shouldn't stop in order to breathe while you're reciting the Quran in Arabic. So why is he talking to David about breathing marks when David is asking him about the pamphlet that omits a large portion and a significant portion of the verse in the Arabic? It has absolutely nothing to do with David's question. But because he's using Arabic terminology and technical terminology at that, he's only able to capitalize on this because he knows that the average non-Muslim wouldn't know about this and therefore wouldn't be able to call him out on it. By way of analogy, if you're familiar with the Hebrew Bible, there are nuqud, which are vowel marks, A, E, O, etc. And then there are cantillation marks. These little symbols that indicate to the chanter or whoever is reciting the Hebrew Bible which melody or tone they should be in, among other things. But they do not affect the translation of the verse at all. Their only function, whether it's in the Hebrew Bible or Arabic Quran, is to help the reciter or the chanter keep their melody as they stay in rhythm or breathe. In other words, should I pause here to breathe or do I wait to the next word? That's their only function. Nothing to do with translation, hence why this is a clear example of Uthman evading David's question and being very deceptive while doing so. Once again, these markings in the Quran are used in order to indicate when you're suggested or not suggested to pause, to breathe while you're reciting. This has absolutely nothing, zero, nothing at all to do with translating the verse into English. It's extremely deceptive of Uthman.
Now, you have where a subject matter begins and ends. Sometimes you have multiple of those in one verse. Are you understanding me? Sometimes you have a verse that the next verse completes the meaning. Okay? Wailul lil musallin, the ayah where it says the ones who pray are cursed. You have to look at the next verse. يعني هم عن صلاتهم ساهون. They are upon their prayer. And they're lazy. They're not careful about their salah, right?
All right. This has nothing to do with waqf or when to stop. He's simply just saying here that sometimes context helps understand the larger meaning of the passage, which, by the way, he recited the passage incorrectly.
يعني هم عن صلاتهم ساهون.
He omitted the word alladhina, which he was going to say, but then he stopped. Anyway, that has nothing to do with tajweed, the rules of tajweed, when you stop or when you don't stop. This is just simply reading context. Neither of the verses he cited have any marks on them to indicate you should stop here, don't stop here. What he's doing here is being deceptive once again in his example, in that it doesn't follow or have anything to do with his original evasive tactic with the waqf mark. But let's think about this for a second. He's saying that if you're only going to read chapter 107 verse 4, which says to those that pray, woe to those who pray, then you're going to be confused. Why is Allah condemning people who pray? Aren't we supposed to pray? So what's the solution of Uthman? He says, read the next verse. Then we know what kind of praying people are being condemned here. But this actually backs David's original point. Notice that Uthman isn't cutting out words here and there from the verse in order to give the meaning of the passage. He's giving more verses, more words, more context to get the fuller meaning. That's exactly what David is saying. Why are they cutting out certain parts in key parts of the verse and not giving us the full context like Uthman just did in chapter 107 in their pamphlets when they're quoting chapter 5 verse 32? Once again though, Uthman's point, or at least the one he intended to make, has nothing to do with David's original question, which is, why do they not translate this entire verse, or why do they omit key parts of the verse in their pamphlet? Is what they're doing deceptive like Uthman? Let's continue.
So now if you don't understand the second verse, you don't understand the first. But on the other hand, there are verses that are almost half a page that have many different contexts within it. So if you take from the meaning that is complete, nothing wrong with that. Are you educated now on that?
No,
Not
a bit, because
okay.
they keep taking stuff out of the middle as well.
That's what I just said.
So yeah,
okay, go ahead. So read that.
If you're going to do that, you can make any verse say anything you want.
No, you can't.
Of course you can. I could take a verse and chop a bunch of parts out of
You
it.
didn't understand what I said. See, this is what a problem. You know what a waqf is? You don't. So that's what I'm trying to explain to you.
He then goes on to ask David if he knows what a waqf is, which again is a mark in the Quran that indicates where you're suggested to either pause or to continue in your recitation. This has nothing to do with how you translate the verse.
Okay.
You cannot just take things out. You have to look at where you can stop and where the subject matter completes. Have you ever get a...
Well, no, this is...
Like your ignorance is the problem
This
here.
is...
You see what this is? This letter here? Do you know what that is?
No, go ahead.
This is called a jeen.
Okay.
All right? Why is it there?
So he points out that the letter jim is in chapter 5 verse 32 above the word jami'an, which means everyone. And because it has a little jim on top of it near the end of the word, that simply means when you're reciting it that you can pause there in order to catch your breath. This is so deceptive from Uthman because it literally has nothing to do with pronunciation or with translation. It's just telling you that you're allowed to pause and breathe here. And true, the reason why scholars suggest that you pause at certain places and not at others is so that you don't give the wrong emphasis or miss an important word that might be coming next to clarify what came before. But it's not obligatory, and it has nothing to do with translation or when you're translating the verse into English, which Arabic words you're allowed to omit in your translation or what you keep. That's so incredibly deceptive.
So you're saying there's these stops all
Yes.
through the middle of this verse.
Yeah, let me explain it to you, because you apparently don't understand how translations are done. So I will explain it to you. Okay. So what does it say here? من أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل. So we ordained on Bani Israel إنه. Now you see the wow here. So anyway,
Just tell me what the reason is for cutting it out.
sure, I will explain it to you. من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض. Whoever kills somebody.
This is the last thing I wanted to point out. He started to read the verse in Arabic, and then he asked David if he sees the letter waw in the verse.
Now you see the wow here.
As you can see here, it's not in its normal font, and it's not the same size as the rest of the letters. The waw here has nothing at all to do with translation. The only function this waw has, which by the way isn't even a waqf or stopping mark, is to tell you that you should elongate the dhamme vowel here. So instead of saying annahu, say annahu. It just elongates the last vowel. Ooh. Nothing to do with translation, nothing to do with waqf, stopping, nothing to do with that at all. It's so deceptive to bring this up. Why even point that out? All of these points are just deceptive, evasive tactics to avoid David's original question.
Two questions. Do you believe that is an accurate quotation of that verse?
Okay.
And two, do you believe that the meaning is represented correctly here as far as the context of the passage in the Quran?
So just be aware that when you get into conversations with Muslims, they will try to use this tactic or a similar one on you, whether you're experienced like David or whether you're just getting into evangelism and apologetics. Muslims always use deceptive and evasive tactics in order to avoid answering your questions. I'll be posting the link to the full discussion in the description below. And again, please watch it on David's channel, not on Uthman's channel. God bless you all, and to the Muslims, repent of Islam, come to Jesus. He is Lord and can save you from your sins if you come to Him.
خلي الصليب عالي 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 دم المسيح غالي غالي